Welcome everyone to another session of Cympire Cyber Talks. Today our guest is Ariel Evans. He's the CEO and founder of Cyber Intelligence for You. Hi Ariel, how are you doing?
Hey, great. How are you today?
I'm fine. Thank you for being here with us. So Cyber Intelligence for You is a workforce acceleration partner that uses hands-on training, not only to educate, but to provide real-world experience. So how do you define yourselves? What exactly do you do for people who doesn't know?
So Cyber Intelligence for You is an educational services corporation that helps to accelerate the inclusion of people who are on the business side of the equation in cybersecurity. So as an example, cyber risk managers, auditors, compliance people, the board, of course, and also for the cybersecurity CISO themselves. And what we do is we have a set of programs that provide education and training for people who want to understand cybersecurity from a business perspective. This includes looking at enterprise cybersecurity in digital business. This is one of the courses. We also have cyber risk management. We have third-party risk management, which is a hot topic over the last few years. And we also have courses that are related to cloud security as well from the business perspective. So everything we're doing is looking at the way the business needs to understand the risk and strategically how can they mitigate that risk and be more cyber resilient. That's what we do.
That's really interesting and really helpful for any kind of company out there. So what do you say it's unique about your programs or the courses that you share, you teach?
We believe that in order for people to really truly understand how to pivot into these positions, they need to have hands-on learning. We provide labs that use the V-Risk cyber risk management platform to allow the students to do everything from risk modeling to privacy impact assessments to cloud security assessments, security tool ROI, a number of use cases that are very unfamiliar to people who have not looked at cybersecurity from a business perspective, and actually to do these activities and to produce them so that they understand how they can take them back to their organizations and actually implement them.
It's interesting because focusing on hands-on training, it's really important to build that muscle memory or so-called muscle memory for any person trying to learn something new, right? So why focusing on hands-on training as the core of your methodology?
So we believe that retention rates are much higher in learning, and that's a proven fact. They've done a number of studies to say that retention rates are between 75 and 85% higher when you have hands-on learning, because what it does is, like you said, it's muscle memory. It's committing what you're doing actually physically by being on the keyboard and taking what you're learning and actually making it into a specific use case that is digestible and understandable to your business. So when companies look at classroom learning as an example, yes, it's effective. However, it's more effective and it becomes more of something that you can actually take your own use case and put it on top of learning. And that becomes a very interesting way of understanding how you can actually utilize it in your business, not just, okay, this is a theory and I understand the theory and I can put this together. No, you can take your own data from your own enterprise and you can incorporate that into the learning experience.
Can you talk to us a bit about the interplay between risk posed to an organization stemming from cyber attacks and continuous training? What do you recommend to your clients in that case?
So this is an interesting perspective. So the way this all started was about 4 years ago. I researched with the Fortune 1000 and the cyber insurance industry as to why businesses couldn't be cyber resilient. And what I found was no one was looking at it from a digital perspective. 85% of the business today is a digital asset, and 20 years ago, 10% was. Furthermore, it's what the cyber criminal attacks. They're going to steal the data. They're going to interrupt the business process with ransomware, denial of service. and they're going to cause you regulatory fines and penalties based on the type of data that you're processing and storing in the systems and technologies. And this is the whole approach that the business class takes, is to get the individual to understand that you can look at risk financially, you can actually quantify it, and you can tie it back to how the cyber insurance company would pay your claim. And then you can understand a number of different use cases out of it. So let's take some examples. Data exfiltration is when the cyber criminal is stealing your data and they're going on the dark web and they're selling it. There's a cost to that. And that cost is related to the number of records. And we show you how to calculate that, but we also show you what are the other use cases around it. Like we have clients that have databases that have hundreds of millions of records in them, but they have no business use, right? They're just sitting there because the client doesn't understand, oh, you know, I'm supposed to actually archive those records offline. From a ransomware perspective, we can actually show you what kind of a ransomware strategy you should have. This is critical today with COVID. You can't try and figure it out after you get the ransom. You've got to figure it out before you get the ransom. The regulatory fines and penalties are evolving at a very rapid rate. You see in the US new privacy laws that are spinning up almost every month. This is critical to understand too. So we look at it financially, but we also look at the asset itself and how likely that asset is to have a problem based on how the asset is created, what kind of technologies are in it, and how the asset is used. That's called inherent risk, and that's a score. And that relates also to the level of controls that you put in place, the effectiveness of your controls, because those controls will reduce that inherent risk. So your inherent risk and your mitigating risk are two things that you want to understand the relationship between. And what that will show you is gaps across your infrastructure where the controls are weak and the exposures are high. And okay, maybe we should prioritize this. And then the last part of the journey is looking at the different data that you get from your cybersecurity tools. So like your vulnerability management scanner, right? Well, what does that do? It detects vulnerabilities. Well, the key question is, which asset is that vulnerability attached to, right? Is it the trading system or some Mickey Mouse system that you don't really care about that much? And then again, the prioritization, because you could have, 30 vulnerabilities that are all level 5s, right? But they're not all created equal. You have to have an understanding of what to do about them. And the next phase of this journey is on continuous control monitoring to capture that metadata from the tools and to show people on a continuous basis what's happening so that you don't have to sit there and get an analyst to sit there and look at log files. That's exhausting and expensive. You can do it in a continuous fashion. So this is where this technology and this whole approach is going. And what that will do for the business is get them to understand how effective their programs are. Do they need to have more budget over here? Do they need to have better resources? What do they need to be more resilient?
Changing the topic, most C-level professionals, not IT related, of course, they don't have any cybersecurity background. What kind of questions should they be asking themselves when it comes to cybersecurity training of their staff?
Excellent question. And what's really critical here is to understand that we do not want to speak to the C-level executives in cyber jargon. We don't want to use terms like man in the middle, denial of service, and all the stuff that they don't understand because they get mystified and then they're going to shut down. We have to talk to the business in the language of metrics. And this is what the digital asset approach allows us to do. We can talk to them in dollars, euros, yen. We can talk to them in terms of scores, what has more probability than something else. And we can talk to them in terms of ROI, and we can talk to them in terms of risk reduction. There's so much we can talk to them about where they don't need a cyber education. So what this program does is it takes the executive and puts them in the driver's seat and allows them to be effective in their role without being a cyber expert.
That's great. So talking about cybersecurity, usually there are three main pillars that form or conform the way organizations protect themselves. It's people, processes, and tools. So in
Right.
these dimensions, how can organizations ensure that their teams are up to the task while we see an enormous deficit in cybersecurity professionals?
A good question. So I would add a fourth pillar on that: people, process, tools, and insurance. Insurance is a key part of a cybersecurity strategy, and cyber insurance is an area that has not been served well by the insurance community. It's being treated like property and casualty, and we don't have actuarial data on cyber insurance. We don't have hundreds of years of, hurricane information. And even if we did, it wouldn't be applicable, right? So we need to understand cyber insurance, and that's another thing we teach. We teach cyber insurance limits, both aggregate and sublimits, and we also teach other aspects of the insurance like risk accumulation metrics and actuarial. But from a people, process, and tools perspective, to get back specifically to what you said, one of the key things is when you look at the effectiveness of the program, do you have the right people in the right positions? And how can you pivot people from being an analyst that is exhausted looking at eyes on glass all the time to having an analyst that can have continuous control monitoring, right? So analysts can see, okay, this has a higher priority than this, and this is what we should do to fix this problem, right? In terms of processes are the ability to understand how we can provide privacy as an example. Process and privacy is very key because of the data subject access rights, the right to be deleted, the right to have their data updated, the right to have their data portable. These processes are key. They're key. And the digital asset approach allows you to understand where does the data live. Because if you don't have a digital asset inventory, you can't delete, you can't rectify, you can't do any of that stuff. You're like a duck in the water, right? This is key. And then on a tools perspective, we're looking at the effectiveness of the tools. What's the ROI on the tool? How effective is the tool? This is also key because you can have a lot of different information that's saying, okay, well, we had a data breach, but we had this tool in place. What was wrong with the tool? Was it not maintained? This is typically what happens is a firewall will lose its effectiveness every 50% every 2 years, right? Okay, well, we have to have people maintaining the firewall. We have to have people maintaining the SIM, maintaining the VMS. These are things that are tuned, right? So we have to have the right level of tool effectiveness. So all of those things together are like a three-legged or a four-legged stool, right? If one leg is broken, the other part will fall down.
Yeah.
We have to have the right balance, and this is what we help them to understand.
Indeed. I have one final question for you. What do you see the cybersecurity training industry heading in the next 5 years?
So we have a couple different ways that people are looking at cybersecurity training. We have different organizations that are providing specific classes that are focused on either cloud or other aspects of cybersecurity. So it will become more domain oriented. We also have the vendors who are saying, okay, I'm going to train you on vulnerability management. I'm going to train you on SIM, right? But that's very vendor specific. Where I see the training going is those things will stay for sure. We need those, but we need the business to be involved. So the training is going to pivot to the business, and it's going to pivot to the metrics and understanding how we get those metrics, how we use those metrics, and how the business can become cyber resilient. Because without that, it doesn't matter how many tools you have or how much training you have on tools, frankly. What's going to happen is you're going to fall flat on your face because you don't understand if your strategy was effective or not. We can have all the layered tools in the world, but if they're not working correctly, and if we don't understand what they do, and if we don't understand that they have to be maintained and effective, we all know where that's going to take us, right? So that's where I think it's going to go. I think it's going to continue to grow. It's going to continue to be a great market, but I also think that's going to pivot into this business training that we so need, because we cannot make our business people cyber experts. That's ridiculous. What we have to do is make our cybersecurity talk to the business in the language of the business.
That's completely true. Well, Ariel, thank you very much for your time, for sharing your knowledge, and hope to see you soon back in Cympire Cyber Talks.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.